policy goes on. It goes on in the face of this compelling evidence that it is counterproductive. And you know, when it was first introduced in 2007, when we had a change of governance here in Gaza, and the reaction to that was to impose this blockade, it was stated by the government of Israel that they were dealing with a hostile entity. So this policy had to be pursued because Gaza was a hostile entity. And we said at the time that this will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So as long as we go on this way, treating with hostility the people of Gaza, then you are going to generate more hostility. And the big problem for us is that the crisis that we have here has two dimensions to it. One is a humanitarian dimension, and that is very visible for all to see. But the bigger crisis is in human development, or de-development. And the fact that half of the population of Gaza are children under the age of 18, that is 700,000 children. And they are living and growing up in this environment, and they will be a product of that environment. How they think, what their outlook will be, their values, their behaviour, their mindsets, their orientation. Now, their mothers and fathers, the other half of the population, are well-educated and civilised and decent people. They want nothing more than to live in peace. They want justice, by the way, and they're entitled to it. And that justice for them, in terms of the conflict, which is a conflict about land, an occupation which has gone on for over 4 decades, a dispossession which has gone on for over 6 decades, that justice that they seek as a resolution to that conflict and this conflict should be found in a political process. And it's not easy, for sure. But in the meantime, all Palestinians should be able to get on with their lives, and we, the civilized world, should find a way to uphold the rule of law, which is their basic rights. In the face of course, tremendous security challenges. We all know that, okay? But we have to find a way of doing that. Because while the humanitarian plight of the people here can be reversed rather quickly, you know, lift the blockade, let in the supplies, and we will restore people to a better set of circumstances. That can be done rather quickly. Of course, the fact that it hasn't been done is a travesty. But as time goes on, the other crisis that we're trying to tackle and deal with, which is to counter the effects of this environment, of this siege mentality, imprisonment, denial of basic rights, a pervasive sense of injustice, and so on and so forth, that is destroying in here the mindsets. And of course, the mindsets of those kids, 700,000 of them, are vulnerable to be shaped in a very negative way. And the daily experience is convincing them more and more that there's nothing to live for, and that there won't be any change, because every day the only change that they experience, notwithstanding how bad it becomes at different stages, is a negative change. You know, this time last year, this compound here was under fire because we were caught up in a very brutal military operation. And at the end of that operation, with so many killed, so many undisputably innocent children killed, maimed, injured, lives destroyed, homes destroyed, and so on and so forth, there was such an outpouring of international reaction, supportive reaction for the plight of the civilian population here, that not that long later, a few weeks later in Sharm el-Sheikh, $4.5 billion, more than was asked for, was pledged. And not $1 of that $4.5 billion has arrived in Gaza 1 year later. Not $1, because there's no construction materials allowed into Gaza. Zero. Even the construction that was going on before the blockade. Partially built schools, partially built housing, partially built infrastructure for sanitation and water, all suspended. That's the reality here. Now, it's just an endless sequence of hope not realized. And at some point, people are going to give up hoping. And when they give up hoping, then they go over to despairing. And when they go over to despairing, then this changes. And that's the part that we don't have much time for. And there's no way that you just then open up the crossing points, let everything then begin. No, because the people that you will have here will have a different mentality. And as I say, it will have become a self-fulfilling prophecy. They will be hostile. And we need to realize that, and that's what it's all about. Ultimately, this is not about just the humanitarian plight of the people. This is about the destruction of a civilized society. It's about the de-development of a society of the future. So the Palestinians of today want nothing more for their children than what all of us in this room want. I'm talking about in the majority.